The diner was one of those old-fashioned roadside places that had been there for decades, the kind with checkered floors, neon lights buzzing faintly, and waitresses who knew most of the customers by name. On weekends, families crowded in after church, and during weekdays, truckers came through for a hot meal and a quick coffee. For Lily, though, the diner was more than just a restaurant, it was a small escape from the quiet loneliness of her life at home. 16 years old, bright-eyed but often withdrawn, she carried her world in her wheelchair. Her legs had never worked the way they should, leaving her confined to the chair since childhood. She had learned to carry her struggles with a smile, though inside, she often wondered if people ever truly saw her beyond her disability. That afternoon, she had convinced her mother to take her out for a milkshake. It wasn't much, but the sweetness of cold chocolate and whipped cream had a way of making her feel normal, like any other teenager enjoying a treat. The door jingled as a group of teenagers sauntered in, their laughter too loud for the small diner. Lily noticed them instantly. Everyone did. They were the kind of kids who fed off attention, swagger in their step, eyes scanning for someone weaker, someone to mock. Lily lowered her gaze to her milkshake, trying to make herself invisible. But the sound of their sneakers squeaking closer made her heart race. "Hey, look," one of the boys sneered, nudging his friend. "Wheels is here." His voice dripped with cruelty. The others chuckled, and soon, the comments flew. They made jokes about her chair, about how she'd never dance at prom, about how slow she must be. Each word cut deeper than the last. Her mother squeezed her hand, whispering, "Ignore them, baby. Just ignore them." But ignoring cruelty was never that simple. The air felt heavy, and the stares of the other diners burned into her. People saw what was happening, but no one spoke up. They just kept eating, pretending not to notice. Then it happened. One of the boys strutted over, towering above her as she sat frozen in her chair. His grin was wide, mocking, his friends watching with gleeful anticipation. Without a word, he leaned down and slapped her across the face. The sound cracked through the diner like a whip. Lily gasped, her cheek stinging, her eyes instantly welling up. Her mother rose halfway out of her seat, but fear rooted her there. She didn't know if standing up to the boys would make it worse. Around them, forks paused midair, coffee cups hovered inches from lips, but still, no one moved. The boy smirked in triumph, turned back to his friends, and strutted out with the rest of them. Their laughter lingered long after the door shut behind them. The silence that followed was suffocating. Lily's milkshake sat untouched, the straw trembling as her hands shook. Her face burned, not just from the slap, but from the humiliation of being attacked in front of everyone and abandoned by their silence. She lowered her eyes to the checkered floor, blinking away tears that refused to stop. For Lily, that hour after the bullies left stretched into an eternity, every second a reminder that sometimes cruelty was loud, but cowardice was even louder. The hour after the bullies left felt endless. The clatter of dishes and the hum of quiet conversation slowly returned, but the atmosphere in the diner remained tense. No one had dared to intervene when it mattered most, and now, a sense of shame hung in the air like smoke. Lily sat quietly, her milkshake melting into a soupy mess, her cheeks still red from the slap. Her mother stroked her hand, whispering soft reassurances, but the girl's gaze was fixed on the tabletop, her spirit crushed under the weight of humiliation. And then, the sound came. At first, it was distant, a low, steady rumble, like thunder rolling across the horizon. It grew louder, closer, until the glass panes of the diner windows faintly vibrated. The regulars turned their heads, eyes narrowing in curiosity. Soon, the unmistakable growl of motorcycle engines filled the parking lot, one after another, until it sounded like a storm of steel had descended on the small-town diner. The door swung open with a squeak of old hinges, and in walked the first biker. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his leather vest covered with patches that told stories only those in his world understood. Behind him came more, men and women alike, each carrying themselves with the kind of confidence that drew every eye in the room. They weren't rowdy or loud, their presence alone demanded attention. The leader, a gray-bearded man with sharp eyes that seemed to read souls, scanned the room. His gaze lingered on Lily. He didn't miss the redness on her cheek or the way her mother tried to shield her with an arm. His brow furrowed. Something inside him shifted, a quiet anger that burned hotter the longer he looked at her. The waitress, nervous but empathetic, stepped forward to greet the newcomers. She leaned in as the leader placed his order, her voice dropping low as she whispered what had happened earlier. She told him about the boys, about the slap, about how no one had lifted a finger. His jaw tightened, the muscles twitching beneath his beard. He glanced back at Lily, and she quickly looked down, not wanting to draw more attention to herself. The biker walked over anyway. His heavy boots thudded against the floor, but when he reached her, his demeanor softened. He crouched slightly so his eyes met hers, his voice surprisingly gentle. "You all right, sweetheart?" he asked, the gravel in his tone softened by genuine concern. Lily hesitated, her lips trembling. She nodded faintly, but her eyes betrayed the truth, she was anything but all right. Her mother squeezed her shoulder, grateful yet wary of strangers inserting themselves into such a raw moment. The man studied Lily for a moment longer before standing tall again. He turned back toward his crew, giving them a subtle nod. That single gesture was enough. They didn't need words, they all understood what had to be done. The bikers settled into booths, ordered their food, and laughed quietly among themselves, but there was an undercurrent of tension in their eyes. They weren't here just to eat. They were waiting, watching, planning. Lily, though still shaken, felt something shift deep inside her. For the first time since the bullies had humiliated her, she didn't feel completely alone. Someone had noticed, someone cared, and she sensed that the boys who thought they had walked away unscathed weren't as untouchable as they believed. The storm had rolled in, and it was only a matter of time before it broke. The teens had left the diner earlier full of swagger, laughing at their cruelty, never imagining their actions would catch up to them. They hung out at their usual spot, a run-down gas station on the edge of town, a place where they could smoke, brag, and feel untouchable. But that evening, the low rumble of engines returned, this time shaking the pavement beneath their feet. One by one, motorcycles lined the street, chrome glinting in the dying light of the sun. The teens, laughter faded as helmets came off and a wall of leather-clad bikers stepped forward. At the front stood the gray-bearded leader. He didn't need to shout to command attention, his presence was enough. His eyes locked onto the boy who had struck Lily. The smirk that usually sat on the teen's face faltered, replaced by unease. The bikers didn't look like men who tolerated cowards picking on the defenseless. "You think it makes you tough," the leader began, his voice carrying like gravel over stone, slapping around a girl who can't even defend herself. His words cut through the silence, each syllable heavy with contempt. The boys shifted nervously, their false bravado slipping away. One tried to laugh it off, muttering, it was just a joke. The leader's expression hardened. He stepped closer, towering over them. "A joke? That girl's got more courage facing every day of her life than you'll ever know. And you think humiliating her makes you a man? Let me tell you something, real strength isn't found in tearing people down. It's in lifting them up." The other bikers spread out, circling the teens like wolves. They didn't raise fists, but their presence alone was enough to make the boys quake. One biker barked, "On your knees." When the teens hesitated, the bikers stepped forward, and the boys quickly dropped, their pride stripped away as their knees hit the pavement. "Now," the leader said, his voice low but deadly serious, "you're going to apologize. Not just some weak mumble. You're going to say it like you mean it, and you're going to promise never to lay a hand on her, or anyone like her, again." At first, the teens muttered apologies, their voices barely audible. The bikers weren't satisfied. "Louder," one woman from the group demanded. Their voices rose, cracking with embarrassment, until the whole block could hear them. Strangers gathering on the sidewalk watched in stunned silence as the bullies were forced to repeat their apology, again and again, until their arrogance dissolved into genuine remorse. Only then did the leader step back, giving a single nod. "Remember this moment. Next time you feel like proving how tough you are, try standing up for someone instead of tearing them down. That's what makes a man." The bikers left as quickly as they had arrived, engines roaring into the distance. Back at the diner, Lily sat by the window with her mother, watching from afar. She couldn't hear the words, but she saw the bullies kneeling in the crowd surrounding them. For the first time since the slap, her heart lifted. When the bikers returned, they didn't speak of what happened. Instead, they raised their milkshakes in her direction. The leader gave her a warm smile and said, "Don't ever let anyone steal that light of yours. You're stronger than you think." For Lily, those words mattered more than the apology. She realized she wasn't invisible. She was worth defending, and sometimes, justice came riding in on two wheels.